Hello, everyone, and welcome to this logistics management podcast that we've titled The Future of Last Mile Logistics, Balancing Automation, Efficiency, and Human Expertise. I'm Michael Levans, and I'm Group Editorial Director for Peerless Media Supply Chain Group, which of course includes Logistics Management Magazine, and I'll be your moderator for this session where we're going to be exploring how automation, intelligent software, and digital transformation are reshaping the last mile delivery market and how couriers can stay ahead in a world of rising customer expectations and of course those razor thin margins. Now today, joining me is Andy Tryba, and Andy is CEO of CXT Software. That's a company that's helping logistics providers streamline operations and build smarter and more efficient delivery networks. Andy, welcome. Great. So glad you can join us today.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Great chatting with you.
Outstanding. Now, Andy, before we dive into the automation and technology, man, let's set the stage a little bit. Now, the last mile delivery space has really changed dramatically over the last couple of years, right? With the new pressures around speed, visibility, and customer expertise. Now, from your vantage point, how do you describe the current state of the last mile market? And what do you think is driving the biggest shifts for couriers today?
Yeah, if you think about the last mile space, it's obviously gone through amazing transformation over the last 5 years or so, as what I call the Amazon effect has
Hmm.
really reset expectations on the consumer mindset,
Yep.
which then obviously translates over to the B2B mindset,
Hmm.
right? Where if you remember from a consumer perspective, normally you order something and it gets to you maybe next week, maybe the
Right.
week after.
Right.
And now, consumers are basically upset if you don't get it tomorrow, nevertheless, hey, I'm up today instead. That
Exactly.
mentality, of course, transfers over to the courier space and the last mile space, where they also have to do that now on a B2B perspective.
Hmm.
So the good news is that that then drives up tons and tons of opportunity for couriers to innovate, to drive speed, to be able to really have higher expectations to their customers, and also be able to then hopefully be able to monetize it. So overall package delivery, of course, has increased by about 3x over the
Yep.
last 10 years.
About right.
And if you look at the expectations over the next 10 years, it's actually an exponential curve from here. So great opportunity to be in the courier side of the world, but obviously, so much harder now because of those expectations. And this is where, again, the role of technology comes into play so much.
Absolutely. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about some of that automation technology, right? So automation is obviously becoming a defining force across all logistics, right? So from your perspective, Andy, where are most courier and logistics providers today on their automation journey? And where are they, and maybe what's holding many of them back from achieving true operational efficiency?
Yeah, it's amazing where there's obviously a wide spectrum of technology adoption within the couriers as a whole.
Hmm.
But fundamentally, there's still so much manual activity going on
Yep.
today. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of the taxi industry pre-Uber,
Hmm.
right? Where you still have a dispatcher, picking up the phone, really understanding each driver and dealing with all of these package delivery issues from point to point versus obviously Uber had and Lyft and others have showcased that if you can automate a lot of that dispatch, if you can automate a lot of that, then all of a sudden you're having a very different expectation with customers where you're
Right.
in that case getting picked up faster, it's actually cheaper, and then you can actually then manage your resources
Right.
as opposed to having to deal with fires. So we see that a lot of people, are still, one click to manual.
Hmm.
They still have to deal with so many manual fires on a day-to-day basis that really that next stage of evolution where you start bringing in AI, where you start bringing in predictive intelligence, where you start really, concentrating on how you can scale your business and the resources as opposed to dealing with the fires.
Hmm.
That's where we see the industry evolving from here.
Yep, absolutely. And you made reference to Uber, and of course that really empowered those drivers to really scale out and grow their businesses as well. So it leads into sort of the intelligent technology and the human empowerment element of our discussion today. That now there's often concern that automation replaces people, right? But the logistics industry still runs on that human expertise, right? That is so important. So how does intelligent logistics software, like what your team is doing at CXT, empower teams rather than replace them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. When you think about again volume scale that I mentioned, where it's 3x and it's gonna 3x again, you need actually more touch, and you actually need more humans in there to be able to go make that happen. But you have to do them obviously exponentially more efficiently,
Hmm.
right? So how do you actually look at the routes that are out there and optimize that with real-time data from not only, traffic and weather, but all the other things that are needed to adjust for that delivery person's day?
Right,
How
right.
do you ensure that you can really, use things like computer vision to enhance their capabilities to drive, a better proof of delivery based on the image quality, or being able to look at, the packages actually being left at the door, or even on the back end, where again, if you're looking at the dispatchers, being able to scale up the number of actual drivers
Yep.
and the number of actual packages that they're working with. All of that, again, is on the backbone of technology and on
Hmm.
automation, but really, enhances their business because you can now handle, many, many more times volume than what they can handle today. But it is, again, on the backs of people. At the end of the day,
Yep.
it's still a people business, and it's still
Absolutely.
the front door to your business and the front door to so many of the other businesses that you're actually delivering for.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that was a big part of our discussions last week in our Next Gen conference with some of the high technology, terrific stuff we're rolling out, but the importance of people. And of course, you just mentioned too, Andy, the importance of scaling to meet those customer expectations again, and also empowering those folks. So now, as we had mentioned already, delivery expectations have certainly evolved, dramatically, right? Same day and on demand are now table stakes, as you mentioned at the outset. Now, what technologies or strategies are essential for logistics providers who want to scale efficiently while still meeting those growing demands?
Yeah, I think when you think about the technology stack, we kind of divide it up into three required areas for, couriers to really efficiently be able to manage that volume. One, of course, is, on the front end dispatch side of the world.
Hmm.
Obviously, being able to optimize your resources, your drivers, be able to handle any type of real-time changes that need to occur out there is first and foremost. Is
Right,
if you can't run an efficient set of drivers, ideally across the hundreds of drivers, it's really hard to do anything else.
right.
Two is really a vertically integrated driver stack itself. Is how do you onboard drivers? How do you train drivers? How do you ensure certifications? How do you go pay them? How do you go use all of the sensors actually in their devices themselves to, again, have a higher level of trust because now you're across even more drivers.
Yep.
And then again, that back end, the third part of it, where how do you then ensure that your dispatchers are getting the right information on a proactive basis?
Hmm.
How do you ensure that they're, again, giving more predictive insights onto where and what might occur, as
Hmm.
opposed to never having to go backwards in time and trying to deal with all of the issues that have already occurred, which means that someone's already had a bad experience, whether that be
Yep.
a driver, whether that be a delivery, whatever it may be. So
Right.
all three of those are necessary components to be successful for that end user, and ensuring that, again, not only your business can scale, from a volume perspective, but then also you're raising the quality bar when it relates to actually the experience of the end customer.
Yeah, yeah. Now let's transition a little bit and talk a little bit more about that digital transformation, right? To get there to what you just explained, Andy. That scaling challenge obviously leads to into another big hurdle that many providers are facing, right? The legacy systems that are still running their operations. We touched on that already a little bit, and it's a big, big issue, of course, across the industry. So and digital transformation can be daunting, obviously, for logistics providers and couriers using older systems. How does CXT make that migration easier? And why is now the right time for companies to modernize that tech stack you had mentioned?
Yeah, it's a great question, Michael. And when you think about CXT, obviously CXT has been around for 25 years, and it's
Hmm.
really been the leader for 25 years across, hundreds and hundreds of various couriers, really across the United States. So it's been that industry leader, and that's obviously why we acquired it as the platform of choice out
Yep.
there. But really, what really excites us and what really makes that transformation really next level is when you think about the technologies that are infusing our day-to-day lives today. That's
Hmm.
namely AI, LLMs, and all of these other things that we start using on a daily basis, and how we're now infusing that actually into the platform itself.
Hmm.
So as I mentioned, you were thinking about data transformers to actually get your data actually into the system is
Right.
now enhanced via AI. If you think about, some of the various emails that folks get to be able to do work orders and what have you, you throwing that through an LLM and actually then automatically placing orders into the system. These
Yep.
are all of the small but important things that make the transition easier today than it ever has been.
Yep.
And it will be even easier tomorrow as these technologies get more and more embedded into the systems.
Yep, absolutely. You just described a few things that are already reality, already working for so many different operations. So let's just kind of take a look at the road ahead a little bit, Andy. Looking ahead, what innovations or trends do you believe will define the next era of logistics management software? And how is CXT preparing providers for that future?
Absolutely. So, first and foremost is obviously, AI is fundamentally the biggest transformation technology that we've probably seen in our lifetimes.
Hmm.
And the ability to actually then use AI to do real work to help the businesses out is where it matters the most, right? Again, on how do you use AI to really, have intelligent routing, and how do you go use AI to ensure that you can have all the data sensors on what actually is occurring out there to
Hmm.
go, ensure that that happens. How do you use AI to really understand how many workers you need, or even what the pricing mechanisms you should be doing to be able to optimize, when you need to actually have more drivers, or
Hmm.
perhaps, when you can, capture more margin from a business perspective.
Right.
How do you use AI then on the computer vision side of the world to, there's so many people out there taking pictures, but a lot of those pictures just simply go into a database and
Right.
maybe someone looks at them at some point. How do you go make sure you can take a picture and look at whether or not that, yeah, that delivery has actually occurred or not? How do you use AI to, again, be more on the predictive analytics side
Right.
of the world to ensure that the users can, anticipate what's going to happen later on today or even next week? And how do you then optimize your resources on all that? So,
Yep.
that's the transformational technology that, it seems cliche
Yep.
now, but for many of us that have kind of been working with big data models and machine
Absolutely.
learning, next evolution of that, but it's becoming real, right?
Yep.
Before you had to have these, armies of people to do machine learning and all of these other things, but now there's so many great APIs and other ways to access a lot of that training that's already occurred that we can then just kind of infuse into our platform. And that's the piece that we're the most excited about.
Right. Absolutely. Andy, you mentioned like those photographs or all those unstructured pieces of data, right, would need then can be pulled in to be made sense of, right? That making sense of the unstructured data is part of that next step. Is that correct?
That's exactly
Yep.
right.
Yep.
There's so much unstructured data out there that occurs on a daily basis.
Right.
And at the end of the day, again, as we mentioned, it's still a human business. So
Yep.
you got to be able to use computer vision to be able to go understand what's happening, but then overlay that with all the other data points that you have within the systems on, when was this route supposed to occur? When was this drop off supposed to occur? How do you go look at, for the medical community, the temperature of the delivery and making sure that that maintains? How do you go make sure that even the pickup time doesn't,
Right.
not only be too late, but then also too early. And how do
Right.
you go make sure that you look at the trends of which drivers you need to train? All of this is in the databases in an unstructured manner today. And it takes a lot of work today to pull that unstructured data out and make sense of it. And this is where, again, like so many of these tools that we're building in the system enable that to go and happen in
Yep.
a seamless manner.
Yep, absolutely. Andy, terrific job. Just we have a couple minutes left, so just kind of wrap some things up. Maybe a final call to action, right? So we like to do that when we very structure our podcast. But and before we wrap up, for couriers and logistics leaders listening who may be wondering, where to start. What's the first step that they can take to begin automating, improving visibility, and positioning their business for that long-term success that they're going to need to do over the course of time.
Yeah, I always tell people to just look at where they're doing manual processes
Right.
today or what software pieces that they're cobbling together to be able to go and be able to run their businesses. And so much is still on spreadsheets. So many, believe it or not, are still doing sticky
Yep.
papers,
Absolutely.
sticky notes all over the place and things like
Hmm.
that. And go look at that and be like, you know what? In this day and age, is that the way that we should be doing it? And
Right.
it's interesting because a lot of folks again, they've been running their businesses for the last 20 years, and they've, set up their systems in a very specific way that worked for them. And
Hmm.
that's great at this level of scale. But again, as we get to the next level of scale, you got to really relook at all that. So I always tell people just really look at and walk around. And I always tell people just like, what are people doing? And taking a look at those systems and saying, okay, you know what? There must be a better way. And then we can obviously help out and kind of do a business process review and be like, hey, listen,
Yep.
these are the ways that we've seen, through hundreds and thousands of folks that we've seen do this. And this is what we recommend you do.
Oh, that's fantastic. And Andy, actually, we do have, just a couple minutes left. So before we sort of officially wrap up, now we've talked today about innovation, about trends, about building up couriers for the future. Now you've actually done some building of your own, right? We've got some recent news here. So CXT Software recently announced it is united with eCourier, now creating, what's now the largest TMS platform serving couriers and shippers. Now, hey, that's a pretty significant piece of news for the delivery management space, right? So how does this merger strengthen your ability to innovate and support the evolving needs of the logistics industry? How's this going to work?
Yeah, we are super excited to bring these two companies together. I mean, you have two amazing industry leaders that have been around both for more than 25 years. So the amount of experience, not only within the organization, but then also embedded in the product is really special. And you don't get that opportunity every day to bring together two amazing companies like this. So yeah, no, we're really excited to ensure that we can really stack hands and unify the two products and bring the best of within both into one unified platform, really consolidate the R&D and energy towards building the future of
Hmm.
the TMS industry, like you and I chatted with about a few minutes ago. So
Absolutely.
yeah, it's going to be great. I think that really the teams are excited so far. Obviously early days
Right.
in the integrations, but it's really been great so far.
Right. So early days, as you mentioned, Andy, can you give us maybe a little bit of a gut feeling for how long until our readers and listeners will be able to take advantage of this excellent new partnership?
Yeah, I mean, we're targeting, definitely sometime early next year, even
Hmm.
really. We're
Fantastic.
looking at the various components and saying, how do we most easily offer that value to the respective customer bases
Right.
while we build this unified version? And we're really going module by module, saying, hey, which is the best core to start with? And then we use that as the best core to then go add the additional features that perhaps
Yep.
one platform or the other had. So, I'd expect us to kind of be going out there with customers, definitely in the first half of next
Fantastic.
year with a lot of these better together story, and then building on that as we get to the second half of next year.
That's fantastic. Well, Andy, we are up against the clock, and thank you again so much for joining us today. Great insights on how last mile providers can use technology not only to compete, but to grow smarter and more resilient operations. Now, of course, to learn more about CXT software and how they're helping couriers streamline their delivery operations and drive digital transformation, of course, cxtsoftware.com is your place. But also, too, we want to thank you so much again, Andy. You're always going to find more podcasts and research and industry coverage here at logisticsmanagement.com, of course. And thank you for listening today. We really appreciate everybody listening in today. And Andy Tryba, CEO of CXT Software. Sir, what a wonderful conversation we had today. Thank you so much.
I appreciate the time.